Well, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be. Thank you for choosing to spend a little time with me today. Uh, we designed these sessions to be a question and answer session, and we did get some questions. But because it's the beginning of the year, I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on for the whole year. And if I don't address the question that you submitted in a way that you like, put it to me and we'll talk about it next month. First question was from Sally Herr. In my opinion, the three most important issues facing the United States in 2022 include universal health care for all, raising minimum wages to the level that all employed people will have a livable wage, and tolerance for all ethnicity, gender, class, etc. Those are big topics, and you will not have time to address them. My question is, what is the likelihood of those issues being addressed? And the second question comes from Mary Weiss. A major issue for employees of the federal government is the COVID vaccine mandate. Any opinion on when that issue will be behind us? And the third question comes, I have a question, what holds me back from my daily spiritual practice? And then this person sent me their birth information. The design of these sessions is such that it isn't possible to address people's individual horoscopes. But what I will do is address the question generally, even when they come in a personal form. Now, what about 2022? Well, if you're a thinkish person and spiritually inclined, or even if you're a complete moron, there is a percolation that's affecting everybody at the unconscious level. So this is a time of great unrest. Well, you didn't need an astrologer to tell you that, but maybe astrology can help us make some sense out of this. There are really 9 issues that I'm going to take up with this year. If I had a couple of months, I might have organized this differently. But let me just tell you what the issues are that I'm going to take up. The Saturn Uranus square. Excuse me, I'm just letting some people in that were waiting in the waiting room. Just for your edification, I had to make these sessions where people come to the waiting room rather than come in with a password, because only if I do it that way am I able to do screen sharing with you. And I had some charts that I want to share with you through the course of our discussion today. So the 9 things that I'm taking up astrologically are the meaning of the Saturn-Uranus square, Jupiter in Pisces, Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, Mars in Gemini, the 4 eclipses of the year, and the Uranus for the year, Neptune for the year, and Pluto for the year, and then the Neptune-Pluto sextile. Now, you may be asking yourself, if you're astrologically savvy, you may be thinking, well, we talked about the Saturn-Uranus square. It happened 3 times last year, Uranus being the revolutionary and Saturn being the conservative archetype, the one that wants security. Well, even though they don't come to exact this year, I felt it necessary to comment because because so many other astrologers, if you've listened to other astrologers, do their predictions for the year. Many people that I respect, Alan Oak and Rick Levine and on, have made a big deal out of and spent the majority of their time talking about the Saturn-Uranus square, which was exact 3 times last year. And in the fall of this year, they come close to meeting again within a degree, but they don't close the deal. And this is very important because, I want to go on record as saying, even though things can look gloomy, and the truth of the matter is, in terms of the pandemic and in terms of things that we might feel very desirous of seeing come to a positive conclusion, it looks gloomy. It is, we have not a lot on the surface of life to feel lighthearted about. But if you remember, Jupiter and Saturn conjuncted at 0 degrees Aquarius in December of 2019, and it started this cycle, which is a very positive cycle going forward. And 2022 is not so much a time of correction. It's just not a time of seeing the rapid transformation that a lot of us would like to see. And I wanted to say that the Saturn-Uranus square is an unfoldment of the conjunction that happened in 1988. And then before that was 1942. And it was a time of trying to concretize our urge for this forward motion. André Barbeau, the French astrologer, was the greatest astrologer in mundane astrology in the 20th century, said, and he studied the cycle for back 400 years, that it has a very strong conservative bent to it. But it can also be the grounding of some brilliant ideas. And we saw that in 1942 and in 1988, certain things that had been floating around in the ethers took root. The square was the first challenge to that. And we had it, of course, very dramatically last year. And we will see that hovering around all through this year. Now, Jupiter, the cosmic Santa Claus, the planet of abundance, is in Pisces now. Pisces is Jupiter's home sign, and Jupiter rules 2 signs, Pisces, infinite bliss, and Jupiter rules Sagittarius, this higher consciousness. So what does it mean that we have Jupiter in Pisces now? Jupiter usually stays in a sign for a year. And as Grace Morris and other astrologers have pointed out, it always signals an area of expanse in the economy. In the stock market, things that are ruled by that sign go up. But Jupiter's only in Pisces until the 10th of May. And then it will go into Jupiter will go into Aries and be there until the 10th of October. And then Jupiter is back in Pisces again. Jupiter in Pisces is a time for us getting in contact with their ideals. Now, lots of astrologers have written on this. The big kahuna here is Jupiter conjuncts Neptune, April 12th. And what we will see is people bonding with an ideal. This happens every 13, 14 years. And the last time that it happened was in Aquarius, just as the world was all falling apart, going crazy. It's in Aquarius then. And, that was the start of the housing crisis. Of course, there were so many other influences going on, Pluto going into Capricorn and all of that. But the point is, lots of people did very well under that influence. After there was a huge crash, the stock market took off and went into, this holy terror climb. Now, with the conjunction of Jupiter in Pisces with Neptune, we will see outrageous optimism, things going crazy. If you go back, my favorite study of this was back in 1650, at the time of the tulip crisis in the Netherlands, where a tulip bulb that would sell for a couple of pennies was selling for like an equivalent of $650 because people kept speculating on it. So Neptune Pisces and Neptune Jupiter Pisces particular can be a time of great over optimism. And what we will see is that people have this fear emerging in them, fear of being left out. Here in Naples, where I live, houses that just a few years ago would be selling for a few $100,000 are selling for over $1 million now. It's the market's gone crazy. But it isn't just the housing market. How many people, when it looked like there was going to be, like a limitation of oil, rushed to fill up their gas tank at the gas station? And we see that, this kind of over amplification that will tend to build until the middle of April. From the middle of April until the middle of till late August, things will be topsy-turvy, people going both directions, wildly speculating and drawing back. Well, what does that mean for us? It's really important to stop and think, what are we supposed to do with this? I assume everybody that comes to these talks, because the talks aren't advertised anywhere except through my newsletter, that we're all creatures of higher consciousness. We want to see the world a better place. And we all tend to be on the same side of the coin. Now, I know everybody here is in contact with people who believe differently than you do. And because of my career, but of my practice, people come to me with things that just sound absolutely lunatic, and they're completely convinced that they have their hands on the truth. What's important for all of us during this year is to stay calm and to be able to listen to people. Now, Mars will be on a tear through the zodiac this year until it gets to Gemini, which will happen in the 20th of August. And Mars, which usually goes through a sign in 4 or 5 weeks, will be in Gemini from the 20th of August until the 25th of March 2023. Well, it turns retrograde, it goes back and forth. but it stays in that sign. And what is Mars? You know, everybody here knows somebody who has Mars in Gemini. People with Mars in Gemini took this incarnation to be heard. They have a bee in their bonnet to get something that is on their mind out to everybody else, to express themselves. Well, when Mars is in Gemini, this will be more epidemic. Now, there's certain things going on in the world during this time that are fairly massive. There's the midterm elections here in the United States, but there's things brewing in other countries around the world that are really important to make note of. Now, remember, I was discussing the square between Saturn and Uranus at the beginning, and it's saying that they're going to be close to exact in the fall. But the fact that they don't come to exactness, I prognosticate that the worst that people can imagine isn't going to come to pass. And the die is cast on a number of fronts. Now, what are politics? What do politics mean for people who are spiritually inclined? What is that about? Well, politically, it just means that what we have to do is learn to live together. Every society has some kind of political structure, some kind of hierarchy or way that people have of interacting with each other. Now, what does Saturn rule? Saturn rules the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign of, some people are up, some people are down. We have a ladder that people climb. What is Uranus? Uranus is the planet of genius, the planet of peculiarity, of chaos, oddness, and it is the sign of freedom. It rules Aquarius. Now, Saturn is one of the co-rulers of Aquarius. So Saturn and Uranus both have something to do with Aquarius. And that's very important because where is Saturn now? Saturn is in the sign Aquarius. Where is Uranus now? Uranus is in Taurus. And Taurus is the sign of consolidation, the sign of, bringing everything into the fold. And the square between the two, Aquarius and Taurus, is an archetype for how do we move forward with the stuff that we have? And the answer in the revolutionary side of the equation is, well, what we have to do is level the playing field, take, things away from rich people and give it to poor people. And what we don't stop to do often, and this is where Jupiter in Pisces comes in, is that we have to be spiritually inclined, where we realize that we can't help other people get where they need to go unless we do it in our own life. Now, again, when I was talking about Mars taking this long sojourn through Gemini, what does it mean for us? Even if you natally, personally have Mars in Gemini, the question isn't to start a newspaper or a blog or to get things out to everybody else, but it's to listen, to spend the time listening to what everybody else has to say. And if we do that, then we are starting along the line of developing the compassion of Jupiter, Neptune coming together in Pisces, which is happening in April. We start building on that to where when the world starts really splintering for real, next fall, that will be prepared to be part of the solution and not more of the problem. There are 4 eclipses this year, and those of you who know me and have been with me for a long time know that I always advocate for people to meditate at the time of the eclipse, or as I do, say my prayers, because it is the time when there is this clinical alignment between the earth, the sun, and the moon that allows something new to open up. Now I'm gonna show you some charts of the upcoming eclipses, and we can talk about them because they're PowerPoints, and you have a role to play in what goes on. Now let me see if I can do this. I've been working on getting this screen share going better. Let me see. Hold on, everybody. I'll be right back. All right. This is the eclipse for the 30th of April, which happens right after the Jupiter Neptune conjunction. And look at this. The conjunction happens to be conjunct Uranus. But we also have Mars, Neptune, Venus, and Jupiter all in Pisces at the time. This chart is set up for Washington, D.C. I generally like to set up eclipse charts for Washington because it gives you an overview of what's going on. Now, we have Pluto. We will talk about this in a little bit later, but Pluto is at 28 degrees in retrograde in Capricorn. Why that's important is that the U.S. chart, any U.S. chart that you use that's set up for the 4th of July, 1776, will have Pluto at 27 degrees of Capricorn. We are in the middle of our Pluto return. It's a very big deal, you know, because Pluto is all or nothing. Pluto is the Lord of life and death. And in Capricorn, it has to do with hierarchical structures. And Pluto, the destroyer, was certainly destroying a form of government that was dominant in the world, you know, the monarchy, the kingships, and under different names in different parts of the world, but nonetheless, in the European model, the royalty. Now, why this is important in this particular chart is Venus, Jupiter, Neptune are in very close conjunction, and they are sextiling Pluto. What is the sextile? The sextile is a magical aspect, 60 degrees. It is allowing us to combine 2 things and have something else emerge from it, like hydrogen and oxygen making water. Water doesn't look like hydrogen and oxygen, it's a different substance. That is the alchemical function of the sextile. And it is giving us all an opportunity to open up to something much higher. Now, the fact that Uranus is conjunct the eclipse, it shows that this is a lightning bolt that will be fired later in the year when Saturn, when Mars by transit in the summer goes over this point, and it will be quite chaotic, potentially quite violent, but nonetheless important. And because Mercury is at 0 degrees of Gemini and trining Pluto down here, it's an out of sign trine to Pluto, and sextiling out of sign again, Jupiter, Venus, and Neptune, a new thought form, a new way of communicating with people will emerge sometime between April and the fall. And we will get a new handle on the way of dealing with each other. This is very important. You know, those of you who know me at the personal level very well, you know that that I'm more of the what you call the liberal persuasion. I grew up in a very liberal household. Both of my parents are Christian ministers. Everybody was welcome in our house, and we had fun with that. And you know, so it hangs on to me. But I gotta say, you know, I have clients that are elected officials in the Republican Party, and I have friends that, you know, close personal friends that think differently on you know, liberal and conservative issues than I do. But at the end of the day, we're all people. And every political persuasion, every economic theory has an implicit good at its root. What's good about the Republican Party is, and Jupiter shows up strongly in the Republican Party chart and always is close to the midheaven when Republicans win an election. And Saturn shows up prominently in the Democratic chart, and it's always prominent when people are winning elections in the Democratic sphere. What is Jupiter? Well, Jupiter is positive. Jupiter is, you know, yes, I believe everybody can make it. Everybody is God. Everybody is good, which is Jupiter's message to all of us. Well, what's Saturn's message? Saturn's message is, well, not everybody can make it. We have to look out for the people who aren't able to get by on their own, who have unfortunate circumstances. And these two things are in alignment with each other and struggle at times, but we're in the opening cycle now, which is progressive by nature. Every 60 years, Jupiter and Saturn conjunct in Aquarius, and you can go back and do the history. They always are an opening, a positive cycle. For 10 years opening and in 10 years consolidating, coming back to closure. Again, a long conversation, but I just wanted to broach the issue. Now, I want to show you another chart for the May 16th eclipse. Let me see. Okay. Baba. Let me see if I can show you this in here. Okay, share. This is the eclipse on May 16th. For those of I just want you to know these eclipses, political figures that you're familiar with, they hit strongly in their charts. Biden, Harris, you know, Donald Trump and all. And this is a very political, you know, tumultuous year. And some of the things that are going to be happening would not be to my liking or to your liking, but it is an act of faith that it is all for a higher good. I wanted to show you this because What is it when the sun is in Taurus and the moon is in Scorpio? This is called the Wesak Festival. Buddhists celebrate it as the time that the Buddha returns to earth and gives a push forward. Well, again, the sun is not that far away from Uranus, but more importantly, look at here. The sun and the moon oppose each other, which they do anytime there's a lunar eclipse. The effect of a lunar eclipse is about 2 months in terms of events in the world, but they're in a T-square with Saturn. And what is a T-square? A T-square is 2 planets opposing each other, squaring a third. This will be, and again, Saturn at the base of the T-square, 24 Aquarius. This is, again, in fixed signs. Fixed means fixed, it's karma. And unless there is emotional movement, we suffer a great deal. Now, Neptune, which we've been talking about, is close to Mars and is sextile the sun and trine the moon. What does that mean? Mars Neptune can be, in a natal chart, can be, a weakening of some organ in the body, or, like energy moving away from the earth plane, the physical body. But spiritually, it is the sign of passion, commitment. It is, crusader aspect, devotion. And when we think rightly during this time, we are pushing the envelope, and we can be lifted. And this is, I got to tell you, as somebody who's been through many Wesak festivals and have, even before I was an astrologer or knew anything about it, when I went back and looked, big breakthroughs happened at the time of the Wesak Festival. Why this is important this year, Jupiter, which is co-ruler of Pisces, is in Aries. Jupiter in Aries is all about throwing yourself into the fray, being absolutely committed to what you're doing. And Jupiter is in sextile to a retrograde Mercury. Your higher mind and your ability to communicate are linked. Mercury going back, meaning you already knew what it was that you had to do. This Jupiter and Mars, you can think of them as in mutual reception. This shows the ability, your ability. And let's be honest, people come to me all the time and say, what can I do? I hate what's going on in the world. Well, guess what? You matter. You can throw yourself into the fray and you will have an effect. But this shows a fine tuning of your own mental life. And for the world, it shows us being on course correction time. Now, externally, you may look and say, we're going to hell in a handbasket. Doesn't look like good news. But behind the scenes, there is a lot of things going on. And we can all be contributors to it. You can do amazing things when you set your mind to it and determine that you're going to be a force for good. Now, in the fall eclipses, which I won't belabor, but I will show you them briefly, because if you can just remember some of these things, and anybody who writes me for the data of anything that we've talked about here today, I'll be more than happy to share it with you. Now, we have an eclipse coming up October 25th, and let me see if I can show you this chart here. Okay, here's this eclipse in the fall. Well, look at, we got Venus, the planet of love and beauty. Conjunct the eclipse, and really closely conjunct it. Now, Venus in Scorpio, it's not a happy camper, because Venus is a sign of love and beauty. Scorpio is too intense for Venus. And Venus rules the north node of the moon. And here it is on near the south node with the sun and the moon. And Mercury is in trine. Mercury, the mental life, is in trine to Mars. Now Mars, remember, has already started its long sojourn through Gemini at this point. And it is for 2 months, Mars is squaring Neptune, because it retrogrades, goes back and forth in the spot. And this, Mars in trine to Neptune here shows that we are all working to make sure that we have our oars in the water before we start rowing. And Pluto, at the bottom of the chart in Washington, D.C., is in trine, a sextile rather, to Neptune. And this is a time of immense struggle here. We have a Mercury making the quincunx to Neptune. And there is a struggle, as you all might know, to get good data. Mercury trine Saturn shows that it requires research and digging and staying with it, being able to come up with uncomfortable facts, things that you may not personally like, but are nonetheless the case. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that because that will be an important turning point. Each one of these eclipses, those of you who've been with me a long time know that in 1999, I gave a one-day workshop on this eclipse in August eclipse of 1999. And I told people about many things that were going to come in the future, including 9/11. And what happened was that that eclipse chart lasted for, again, several years going forward, as all, solar eclipses do. But the reason I'm belaboring them now is that all of these eclipses are not just setting a pattern that will be triggered, years later. They're for things that are actually happening this year. And so it is important because they'll be triggered by things this year. Now, the last eclipse of the year, let me get back, is in November. Well, this eclipse, the November 8th, is it's a lunar eclipse with Venus close to the sun and Mercury close to the sun, all of them being opposed to Uranus, the moon, and the north node of the moon. Now, people who are of liberal persuasion may think of this as, yippee, we're going to have a breakthrough. It would be like, once the genie's out of the bottle, you may not like what emerges from it. Again, here's Saturn at the base of this T square with the sun and moon and Uranus. Uranus is Saturn in Aquarius. Means something good happens when you're willing to take I'm translating it into something very personal for each one of you. When you're willing to take a stand on something very personal that you believe in, even when everybody else doesn't agree with you, that is how the whole society grows. If you're willing to stand against the whole world because you've latched on to something that was true, then the world improves. But only if you can do it in a nonviolent way. Nonviolence in thought, in words, in deeds. I struggle with that myself. I lose my temper. I get upset with people. I haven't actually had a fight with anybody in years, but it's an ongoing struggle. So again, Saturn in Aquarius has to be willing to operate on its own in order to get anywhere. Now, I have one other thing that I wanted to talk about. I was talking about the eclipses, and I'm going to just quickly mention Uranus starts the year at 10:57 of Taurus and ends the year at 15:10 of Taurus. But before it turns retrograde, it makes it as far as 18:55. Why is that important? Why is it important that Uranus went all the way to 18:55 of Taurus before it turned retrograde? Well, I'm going to answer my own question. Let me see if I can do this the shorthand way. I might not be able to, but I'll try. Okay. Nope, I have to stop. Excuse me just a second. I'll be right back. What we want is USA chart. Okie dokie. All righty. You want to do the screen share thing here. Now, as I say, you'll find other people who use a different chart for the United States. I mean, the majority of people use July 4th, 1776. But some people use a chart, and for good record-keeping reasons, later in the afternoon. I use this chart because it works. And, I was told by one of my early astrology teachers, who's long since passed away, that this was the moment that Benjamin Franklin decided to join the rebellion and be part of what was going on, ensuring that the United States would come out victorious at the end. Has Uranus rising. Now, in this chart, Taurus is intercepted, and Uranus in Taurus will be squaring the moon. And so what we will see through the summer and fall is great turbulence amongst the general public. Again, the moon rules the public. It's the temperament. But it is a breaking free of something. And again, again, the moon rules this second house in this chart. And, that is goods and services, the finances. I think that there will be at this time, will be a large correction in the stock market. And everybody's watching the housing market. And of course, the housing market would be ruled by the fourth house, and the sun in Cancer is there. So there's some spillover. But what I wanted to say is that this Uranus going through the world point, which is at 15 degrees of Taurus, 15 degrees of the fixed signs, and 0 degrees of the cardinal signs, called the world point. And things for the whole society move on that. And so we will see that right up on through the end of the year, this turbulence. Now, Neptune starts the year at 20 degrees of Pisces and ends at 25. Pluto starts the year at 15 Capricorn and ends up at 28 Capricorn. Oh God, let me go back to the screen share for just a minute here. I wanted to show you something else in the US chart. See here, Pluto, Lord of the underworld, the ruler of Scorpio, which again is intercepted in this US chart. Pluto going over its natal spot. Lots of astrologers prognosticate on what this means, but everybody will agree that it is something deep and profound. But doing a study of Pluto returns isn't something that has ever been done, and because there aren't enough charts that are in existence for thousands of years that you can go back and look at when Pluto returns and what it meant. But what I would guess, because Pluto opposes Mercury in the US chart, is that this is a time of us confronting our own dark side. And things get better if we face it and deal with it. And if not, the US becomes less significant on the world stage. It's a tremendous decline. Anyway, so I just point that out. Now, what was I going to say? Oh, Neptune is the planet of infinite bliss. Pluto is the planet of infinite power, of existence. The two of them are in sextile, which has been a blessing. We've had it for many years. Actually, the influence started at the end of the Second World War and will go on until 2032. Now, you may say, what can be the significance of that aspect this year when it's something that goes on for so long? Well, I gotta say, remember that Mars, the planet of energy, desire, the planet of pushing the envelope, so to speak, will be squaring Neptune through the fall. And it prompts the inner workings of this Neptune-Pluto conjunction. Now, do you remember the US chart that we were just looking at? The sun, the ascendant and Uranus are conjunct. Every time Uranus comes back to the conjunction of its natal place and the ascendant, the US is in war. The Civil War, the Second World War, and so on. So why is this important for us now? Well, in just a couple of years, Uranus will be in that spot again. But let's look at the US chart again, just for a second here. Well, I want to show you one other chart first. Excuse me just a second here. Let me see. All righty. This, the sextile between planet of infinite bliss, the planet of infinite power, the sextile is an unfolding, a manifesting of the promise that started with the conjunction. Just like when we were talking about Saturn squaring Uranus was a manifestation of what was going on at the conjunction of the two back in 1942 and 1988. let's look, let's look now at the conjunction of the last conjunction, and so almost 500 years cycle. Look at this, the conjunction of Pluto and Neptune. Where is it? 8 degrees of Gemini. It was right on the US ascendant Uranus. Again, what did that show? Now promoting, and when the sextile started between these two planets was the time that the US came into world prominence at the end of the Second World War. You know, if you go back to 1900, the time of this conjunction, the dominant country in the world with the largest army, the most navy, the largest per capita income, the largest gross national product, largest standing army, it was England in the year 1900. But at the end of the Second World War, it was the United States. And so this long 84, 80, 83, 84, 85 year cycle of influence, it's been the US. So what happens as this cycle wanes? What happens this year will determine what happens not just to the US, but to this grand experiment, the democracy. Now, God has got infinite knowledge, infinite power, infinite bliss. The divine being is there regardless of what happens. What role we play in this as individuals now, it's a very, very big deal. So what I'm sharing with you is the unfoldment of this conjunction of back from in 1891, 1892. You know, the conjunction took place 3 times, and I'm just showing again. Let me show you something else just for kicks here. I think you would enjoy this. Well, let's look at the last Pluto conjunction before the one that we were just talking about. Okay, the last one, let me see if I can screen share this with you. The last one was in 1398. Well, what made that important? Well, this was the time that Gutenberg was inventing the printing press. Well, as Marshall McLuhan is apt to tell us in his book, The Gutenberg Galaxy, it changed everything, the way that we think, the way that we interact with each other, the way that we live, all and came to a standstill and then a restart. And we can say, okay, well, what happened with the conjunction, which happened, in 1891. Let me see. Okay, go back here and see, how do we screen share this? This conjunction and took place, again, right on the U.S. ascendant. But what does it mean that it was in Gemini? Well, the Gutenberg revolution was one level, But then the electronic revolution, which took off at this time, how many famous inventions took place? The telegraph, the telephone, the automobile, the airplane, all within a handful of years of the time of this conjunction. Things that would change our world forever at a technological level. So what we have to do, and the question came forward right at the beginning of this, the question that was posed by Sally Herr, the three questions that she saw as major issues. Well, not a lot will happen this year, but it sets the groundwork for what will happen over the next couple of years that will bring us to a closer resolution. The universal health care minimum wage and the acceptance of people for who they are, not what they look like or what their background was about. That's all coming about. It just seems, for me and you and most of us humans, it seems like it happens very slowly. So we have to be vigilant but patient. The COVID mandate is going to be it's a bogus issue, but it'll be a tug of war for a long time until 2023, where when Pluto goes into Aquarius, a lot of this stuff will evaporate. We will normalize life, but it's not going to happen, as I say, this year. And then the third question that we had was, what about a daily spiritual practice? The most important thing is that you have one. And with Saturn in Aquarius all year and being at the base of the T-square in the times of two of the eclipses, it is important that you set up some kind of regular pattern that you can adhere to. We think about what's important to us. When you fall in love with a person, nobody has to tell you what you have to do to strengthen that love for the person. You automatically do it. And when your love for God is stronger than your love for yourself, you're propelled forward on it regardless of what the obstacles are. Again, there are personal things in each person's individual chart that give us strong clues, looking at how the moon rules habits. How does your moon function? When you're attempting to build a new habit, you look at the sign and house and aspect pattern of your moon, and you build that. And again, what is a practice but a ritualized habit pattern? And so that is the foundation for how we break out of the room that we're in, the trappings of this limited, finite physical illusion. Anyway, we're really out of time. If you like what we talked about today and you want to go back and look at it, it'll be posted on the internet, hopefully a little bit later today. And you can resubmit questions if you submitted these and you didn't get them. Hold on just a second. Hello? Yeah, so I'm just wrapping it up now. I'm closing. Okay. Okay. Somebody else thought it was at 1 today. Oh my God. So anyway, I love you all. I really am appreciative for you coming to this. I could have made this, expansive. I could have advertised on Facebook, on the internet and stuff. And I could have called up people that, that are my soul brothers and sisters in the spiritual community and brought them in. But I've wanted these talks to be intimate and to be limited only to the people who really went out of their way to be part of what we're doing. And I'm going to continue in that mode going forward for a while. I chose to talk the topic to start today at noon instead of its usual 1 o'clock because the aspects were better. Simple as that. Anyway, I love you all, and I hope to see you again in a talk in the future. Email me if you got questions. Have a great day. Namaste.